Welcome back everyone to my channel. Today, we're going to talk together about a topic that a lot of people are interested in. A topic where, when mentioned, many people wish for rapid results. But the most important thing we need to prioritize is maintaining health. That is about diet and exercise for people who are facing obesity, with the desire to improve their physique and health effectively. This conversation is specifically for young and middle-aged people in the US who are looking for practical and safe approaches. I want to start by stating something important. Obesity is a complex health condition, which can be caused by many factors. And it's not anyone's fault. There's nothing to be ashamed of or feel self-conscious about. The important thing is that we are aware of our condition and actively seek healthy solutions to improve our overall health. Today's chat is not about quick weight loss methods or miracles, but about building sustainable, scientific habits for a healthier life in the long run. Why is this topic so important for both young and middle-aged people dealing with obesity in the US? Scientific studies have very clearly demonstrated the link between obesity and the risk of many chronic diseases. Obesity significantly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, like heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, joint problems, due to stress on the body, sleep apnea, certain cancers, and even mental health issues like depression and anxiety. For young people who want to lose weight rapidly, sometimes the lack of experience and the desire for immediate results can lead them to be drawn to dangerous dieting trends online, or exercise in ways that are not suitable for their physical condition. For example, a college student sees an ad for a miracle weight loss pill online and decides to try it without researching it carefully. The result is that they feel tired and dizzy, and it affects their studies. Or another young person suddenly starts running with high intensity every day even though their body is not used to it, leading to knee joint injuries. As older folks often say, haste makes waste. Being too quick sometimes doesn't bring good results, and can even cause harm. As for middle-aged people who are dealing with obesity, they may already have underlying health problems. Trying to lose weight rapidly without medical supervision can worsen those problems. For example, a middle-aged man with obesity and a history of heart disease. He followed online advice and started a very low-calorie diet combined with high-intensity exercise. This put a lot of stress on his cardiovascular system and almost caused a dangerous situation. Clearly, weight loss needs to be done wisely and safely. An older person has a great saying, if you are sick, pray to all directions, but praying to the right place. The right person is important. Especially when it comes to health. So, how can we approach eating and exercising to lose weight when obese effectively while still ensuring health and safety? Even when you hope for rapid results within safe limits. I want to emphasize again, always start by consulting a doctor and/or a licensed dietitian to get a personalized plan. They are professionals who can assess your specific health condition, underlying illnesses, if any, and provide the most suitable and safe advice, diet plan, and exercise regimen for you. What I share here is general information for reference only. Now we will go into the diet part, focusing on creating a safe and healthy calorie deficit, with easy to find and easy to prepare foods. The goal is sustainable weight loss. Not just the number on the scale going down quickly while your body becomes weak. Create a calorie deficit, but safely. The principle of weight loss is to consume fewer calories than you burn. That's right, but the number of calories cut needs to be calculated carefully. Cutting calories too drastically or too low can be harmful. A dietitian can help you determine the appropriate calorie target for your needs and condition. Stay away from fad diets that promise super fast weight loss and require completely cutting out a food group or extremely restrictive eating. They are often unsustainable and dangerous. Prioritize nutrient density and foods that provide satiety, to feel full longer with fewer calories. Focus on lean protein, fiber, and a moderate amount of healthy fats. Lean protein, skinless chicken breast, fish, fatty fish like salmon and mackerel are good, but control portions because they have calories. Beans, lentils, tofu, eggs. Protein helps build muscle, important for metabolism, keeps you full longer, and supports recovery after exercise. This is very important to avoid feeling ravenous and wanting to snack uncontrollably. How to incorporate boiled, grilled, pan-seared chicken shredded and mixed with salad. Pan-seared fish with boiled vegetables. Lentil soup. Boiled eggs to take to work. Advice, warnings. Control protein portions according to your needs. People with kidney disease need to consult their doctor about the amount of protein they consume. People with allergies to specific proteins, eggs, soy, fish, need to avoid them. Fiber from non-starchy vegetables and some fruits, broccoli, spinach, cucumber, tomatoes, bell peppers, apples, with skin, pears, with skin, berries. Fiber is abundant in vitamins and minerals with very low calories. It helps keep you full for a long time and aids digestion. Antioxidants from fruits and vegetables also support overall health, including brain function. How to incorporate. Add vegetables to every meal. Eat raw vegetables with a low-fat dip. Add berries to low-sugar yogurt. Advice, warnings. Increase fiber gradually to avoid bloating and indigestion. People with diabetes need to control the amount and type of sugary fruits they eat. Consult a doctor or dietitian. Whole grains, controlled portions, brown rice, oatmeal, whole wheat bread, in moderation because they still contain calories. They provide complex carbohydrates for stable energy and fiber for good digestion. Stable energy also helps maintain concentration at work and in life. How to incorporate. Eat a small portion of brown rice instead of white rice. Eat unsweetened oatmeal with a little bit of berries. Make sandwiches with whole wheat bread and lean protein. Advice, warnings. Portion control is very important. Don't eat too much. People with celiac disease need to choose gluten-free whole grains. Healthy fats. Very small amounts, avocado. Nuts. Extra virgin olive oil. good for the brain and help absorb vitamins. You know, however, fats are very calorie dense. You know, when you want to lose weight rapidly, within safe limits. Strictly controlling the amount of fat you consume is extremely important. You know, just a very small handful of nuts as a snack. You know, about a small handful. Eating too much will be counterproductive. You know, how to incorporate a few slices of avocado in a salad. You know, a small pinch of walnuts as a snack. You know, use a very small amount of olive oil for salad dressing or stir-frying vegetables. You know, advice, warnings. Control portions extremely strictly. You know, people with nut allergies need to avoid them completely. You know, portion control is king. No matter how healthy the food is. Eating too much will still cause you to gain weight. You know, learning how to read nutrition labels, using smaller plates, and paying attention to your body's fullness cues are extremely important. You know, drinking water is your best friend. Drinking enough plain water helps support metabolism and can make you feel fuller. You know, drinking a glass of water before a meal can help you eat less. You know, water is also essential for all body functions. You know, what to limit or avoid. More strictly, minimize sugary drinks, soda, boxed juices, fast food, fried food, sweets, processed foods, and packaged snacks. You know, these foods often contain empty calories, low in nutrients, and unhealthy fats. You know, limit alcohol as it contains a lot of calories and can affect your ability to make healthy eating decisions. You know, diet advice, re-emphasized warnings. Please consult a doctor or a licensed dietitian. You know, they can calculate the appropriate calorie intake for you. Consider underlying health conditions, and provide a safe eating plan so you can lose weight while still getting enough nutrients and not harming your health. You know, restrictive dieting on your own can cause many serious problems. You know, such as muscle loss, vitamin deficiency, gallstones, and even heart problems. You know, now for the exercise part. You know, exercise plays an important role in burning calories, building muscle, and improving overall health when losing weight. You know, for people with obesity, this needs to be approached carefully and scientifically. You know, start very gently. Avoid exercises that put a lot of stress on your joints like high-intensity running or jumping rope right from the start. You know, begin with light, low-impact exercises like walking, maybe on a treadmill, swimming, stationary cycling, or water aerobics. You know, these activities help you move and burn calories while protecting your joints. You know, the goal is to build a habit of daily movement first. You know, gradually increase time and intensity. As your body gets used to it, gradually increase the time you exercise. And then the intensity. You know, for example, from walking 15 minutes a day to 20 minutes. Then 30 minutes. You know, then you can slightly increase your walking speed. You know, gradual progress is sustainable. You know, include strength training. Don't be afraid to do strength training exercises whether you are male or female. You know, strength training helps build muscle. And muscle burns more calories than fat even at rest. You know, this is very important for maintaining metabolism during weight loss. You know, start with light weights, resistance bands, or bodyweight exercises. You know, an experienced trainer can guide you to perform exercises with correct technique to avoid injuries. You know, Find activities you enjoy and can maintain. Hiking in the park, joining a gentle dance class, or playing active games with your children or grandchildren. Finding joy in movement will help you maintain the habit long term. Integrate movement into your schedule. Find ways to move throughout the day, even if they are small activities. Take the stairs instead of the elevator, if it's safe. Walk instead of driving for short distances. Stand up and move around after every 30 to 60 minutes of sitting. These small changes add up to a big difference. As older folks often say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Every step you take is valuable for your health. Seek support. Exercising with friends or family, or joining an exercise group can give you more motivation and commitment. A personal trainer, if you can afford it, can also design a safe and suitable workout plan for you. Exercise advice, re-emphasized warnings. Consulting a doctor before starting any new exercise program is mandatory. Especially when you are obese or have underlying conditions like heart problems, high blood pressure, or joint issues. Your doctor can check your cardiovascular health and joints and provide safe advice on the type and intensity of exercise that is suitable for you. Listening to your body is very important. Don't try to push yourself too hard at the beginning. It can cause injuries and make you discouraged. Respect your body. Okay. Mindset and expectations. When you want to lose weight rapidly, we tend to set unrealistic expectations. This can lead to disappointment and wanting to give up. Set realistic and sustainable goals. Healthy weight loss is usually about 0.5 to 1 kilogram, 1–2 pounds, per week. Losing weight at this rate allows your body to adapt and reduces the risk of muscle loss. Although you might lose a little faster initially due to water loss, in the long run, this rate is safe and sustainable. If you want to lose weight significantly faster, this should only be done under strict medical supervision. Celebrate small victories. Don't just focus on the number on the scale. Celebrate when you choose a healthy meal instead of fast food, when you complete even a short workout, when your clothes start to fit looser. These non-scale victories are very important for staying motivated. Deal with plateau phases. This is a normal part of the weight loss journey. There will be times when your weight doesn't change for a few weeks. Don't get discouraged. Review your diet and exercise plan. And if needed, consult a professional to make adjustments. Seek support. Joining a weight loss support group, talking to friends and family, or working with a professional can provide you with motivation, advice, and empathy throughout the journey. You don't have to do it alone. Love yourself. The weight loss process can be mentally challenging. Treat yourself with kindness and patience. Don't be too hard on yourself when you slip up. Learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. There's a saying that I really like. An older person once told me, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." The weight loss journey is the same. Don't worry too much about the destination. Focus on taking small steps each day. Choose a healthier meal. Walk for an extra 10 minutes. Every step is valuable. I know that facing obesity and wanting to lose weight can be an emotional battle. But remember, the ultimate goal is to have a healthier and happier life. And that is completely within your reach. Oh, I want to say this one more time about the foods good for memory and concentration. Recipes and advice for people with medical conditions. As I've integrated into the diet section. Foods like fatty fish, nuts, berries, and leafy greens are very good for overall health, including brain function. However, when you are in the process of losing weight due to obesity, controlling portions and choosing foods should follow an overall plan developed by a dietitian. Advice about people with medical conditions who shouldn't consume certain foods has also been mentioned, e.g. nut allergies, kidney disease and protein, diabetes and fruits. But these are just general tips. Please always consult your personal doctor or a registered dietitian for the most accurate medical advice based on your specific health condition. They are the ones who know your body best and can help you avoid unnecessary risks. I hope today's conversation has given everyone a more realistic and safe perspective on eating and exercising for weight loss when obese. Remember, this is a long journey, requiring patience, commitment, and most importantly, self-love and seeking support when needed. Now it's time for me to hear from you. Where are you in your weight loss journey? What are the biggest challenges you are facing? Have you found any effective and sustainable eating or exercise strategies for yourself? Or do you have any stories or experiences you want to share to inspire others? Please leave your comments below this video. Let's build a supportive and positive community together. Or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you all very much for taking the time to watch this video. I know this is not an easy topic, but talking about it is the first step towards change. Start with the smallest steps and move towards a healthier life every day. Okay, if you found this content useful and want to see more videos from me on topics related to health, healthy lifestyle, self-development, and how to cope with challenges in modern life, don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with your friends and family, especially those who need motivation and information on this topic. And most importantly, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell icon right away so you don't miss any new content in the future. Your support is the biggest motivation to help the channel grow and bring more valuable content. See you all in the next videos. Wishing everyone always be healthy, happy, and successful on their journey.